hereby call this open council session held Monday, February 12, 2018 to order. And I'd like to ask everyone to please rise for a moment of silence. Please be seated. So we've dealt with our closed session. Now we're open session, pecuniary interest and nature thereof. Seeing none, announcements from council and staff. Councillor Drew.
I didn't have time to put this on my regional report, but just wanted to announce that the Environmental Services team, the region, has won Ontario Public Works Association Project of the Year Award for the Non-Quan Water Pollution Control Plant project. So that's good news for the region and for us.
Any other announcements from council? Councillor Kett.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased to see that we had lots of snow this weekend, and we've got huge problems in the downtown, and Ms. Coleman has been working hard to resolve all those problems, so I'm glad there's news about that. That's all. Thank you.
Ms. Coleman, was there a tentative date for the downtown? Because I know some people were asking about that.
Yes, I did confirm about half an hour ago that it's scheduled for tomorrow night. I hate to make promises because last time it was scheduled the equipment broke down and it didn't happen, but it looks like it will be clear tomorrow night.
Good news that some more the excess snow will be removed from the commercial areas of the town. Announcements, other announcements from council? Just one was the Squog was the host community for the Climate Change Symposium, well attended. It was organized by Durham Agricultural Advisory Committee, Durham Environmental Advisory Committee, and
Just the two
with participations from conservation boards and keynote speakers from the province, Ministry of the Environment there, and climate change. So well attended event at the rec center, and excellent speakers all about climate change, what the and the region's
action plan,
gold standard document, action plan. Excellent discussion pieces with great representation. There were many mayors and councillors and senior staff from throughout Ontario were there on Friday. So glad to see that event well attended. Any other final announcements from staff?
Oh, Diane.
Oh, Ms. Valentin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to remind the public and the paper that we're having a budget open house on Wednesday, February 21st at the library from 6:30 to 8.
I should note the clerk and a couple, Councillor Watton and Councillor Back, send their regrets today. They had planned time away, so we'll be just a little light on this side. So, but that doesn't halt our important council session today, which includes our draft budget. And on that note, we'll move on to item 8.1 with Director of Finance, Ms. Valentin, to enlighten us with this excellent budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council, staff. I'd like to present to you today the draft 2018 operating budget. I'd like to let you know that there's several departments worked very hard to bring this budget forward, and I'm very proud of the result that bringing forward to present to you today. So just an introduction to our budget process. The budget process never really ends. Once we'll finish this, we'll actually start looking towards next year. We look at the actuals, and then the whole process begins again. We set up a budget timetable in about June. That's presented to council. We typically now have an online budget survey, council list of items that council would like staff to review to try and incorporate into the budget. We bring forward a draft operating budget. We have an operating budget open house, and then the final presentation and council approval. So some of the key dates that our online survey this year was posted from September 6th to September 22nd. We had 134 respondents this year, which was significantly higher than prior year. The draft operating budget is being presented today to council. It was posted online on Wednesday, I believe, of this week, and is available in hard copy at the library and at municipal office. And the operating budget house, as I mentioned, is this next Wednesday, February 21st at the library from 6:30 to 8. And then the final approval, the final budget will be coming forward to council on March 5th for approval. So the draft operating budget that I'm presenting to you today does meet council's target. Council provided a target on October 23rd of a 1.5% CPI, 0.4% for Bill 148, as well as our new debenture, and a 2% roads levy. So I was happy to report now that the net operating budget is slightly below the 1.9. We're coming in at 1.86, and the roads and roads-related levy of 2% for a total of 3.86. So this total budget is, it amounts to $12,272,100, and it is split between the various departments. I've done this graphically for you as well. And basically the three largest departments are Public Works, so your roads and parks, Fire and Emergency Services, and then Recreation and Culture. The annual increase to the total average residential tax bill, including the regional portion as well as the school board, is actually a total of $55 annually, or 1.25% increase over last year. So Scugog, again, is going to benefit from the reassessment that has happened across the region. So the region approved a budget increase of 1.83% this past week. However, our assessment piece for Scugog here actually showed the net increase is only slight, because our reassessment actually came in at a decrease of 1.67%. So you see that the region of Durham change year over year is $4 on the average residential tax bill. So graphically, this just shows you the distribution of the residential tax bill. 57% of your tax bill does go down to the region for the regional services. 28% is the township portion, and 15% is the school board portion. So of the $55 annual increase, that amounts to about $1.06 per week. This is just a graphic representation of the taxes that are split by property class. You can see that the residential class bears the most weight of the tax burden in the municipality of Scugog. So some of the items that have impacted this budget, I'm happy to report that over the last 2 years of this budget, we've been able to eliminate the reserve transfer to help fund the tax levy. Last year we had an elimination of $222,000 out of the budget. This year we were able to actually, through savings and various other budget allocations and such, we're able to eliminate the reserve transfer of $587,000. So over the last 2 years, we were able to eliminate over $800,000 that was used to help fund the tax levy. We also did an extensive review of the user fees and charges, and we're able to show increases, and we're trying to maximize our non-tax revenue and permits. So we've added $262,000 to this budget in revenue. Fire and Emergency Services had a restructuring last year, so the budget impact is going to be shown this year. In total, the restructuring amounts to a decrease of about $109,000. They do have additional savings that were identified through their budget. This was related to the restructuring. And we eliminated the arena booth, and actual savings as far as staff savings and overall savings is matched to about $22,500. Now those savings were utilized, and we were able to shift some of the budget allocation to where the need was greatest without affecting the level of service that residents expect. So we were able to have the 2% roads levy. We also increased in our operating budget, we increased the investment in roads maintenance. So this is an increase in gravel, crack sealing, slurry seal. We were able to incorporate the new debenture payment, the annualized impact for Scugog Line 6, and we were able to help offset Bill 148 impact, specifically the minimum wage. Also included in this budget, there are 8 new retirees that are entitled to group benefits for a total of $33,000, and we were able to incorporate our salary wage increase. So I would like to thank Council and for their direction, and staff for taking such an in-depth look at their budget to help achieve this very responsible budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report, the budget, and to you, your department, and all of staff, because I know it was a team effort, but to come forward with what I think is an incredible feat, to be able to accomplish all that, take away those reserve transfers and wrap everything up into within the guidelines that we set for you. So I wanted to thank, on behalf of council, each and every one of the members of staff that were all involved with it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Valentin on her report? Councillor Kett?
Thank you. Just, I got a few questions.
Is it to do with the budget lines or to do with the slides? Because we're going to get into the budget after.
Okay. No, that's fine. It's about the budget.
Okay. Any other questions on the presentation? All right. Seeing none, thank you. I have a move by Councillor Drew, second by Councillor Somerville, that the presentation by Diane Valentin, Director of Finance Treasurer, 2018 operating budget be received. All those in favor? Carried. Next is the consent agenda, where we have items wished to be pulled, and we have 9.1.3 pulled by Councillor Guido, Blackstock Rec Advisory Committee, and we have the 9.2.1, the draft operating budget, pulled by Councillor Guido. 9.2.2 pulled by Councillor Drew, the Williams Point Road speed limit. 9.2.3, the new desktop, the RFP or contract award for new desktop workstations by Councillor Somerville, and then the contract award for the replacement VM host, again pulled by Councillor Somerville. Councillor Guido pulled the regional report, 9.2.5. Councillor Drew pulled the 9.4, the bylaw to amend the traffic bylaw. So the only ones not pulled, 9.1.1, 9.1.2, 9.1.4, and 9.1.5. Any councillor wish any of those 4 pulled? All right. So moved by Councillor Drew, second by Councillor Somerville, the items listed under Section 9 consent agenda be approved, save and accept the items I called out. Last chance. All those in favor? Carried. Next item, first one is the 9.1.3, Councillor Guido. Oh, sorry, before you move on, I've got Councillor Guido moved it, Councillor Drew seconded.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is on page 20 of the minutes from the Blackstock Advisory Committee, and I was hoping Mr. Belfry would have been here this evening, but he is. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see you. Director Heritage is covering you. That might be good for later in the budget items when I have questions for you. In the minutes from this advisory committee meeting, when the core service and efficiency review was presented, it said the report did not have full support of staff. Was that indicating that the efficiency review didn't have supportive staff, or is this an error in the minutes?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I would say that's a bit overstated in the minutes. That's not exactly what the case is. Staff had many conversations about the review. I think that was just a misinterpretation by the minute taker. But that being said, we did voice our opinions on certain things. We were in support of a recreation committee at the end. We did go to our Sierra Planning and ask them to provide comment to it. So I think it was just a misinterpretation in those minutes. So we're going to go back and revisit those minutes and have it edited.
So, to our acting clerk, do we want to note that corrections are going to be made, or will they just come back to us at a future council meeting? Sorry.
No, it's fine, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think I heard Mr. Belfry said he would take this back to the committee, and then revisit it with the committee and have the appropriate amendment come forward?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yep. That next meeting's in March.
Next meeting's in March. So I guess we could defer these minutes until that time and bring them back?
There was nothing pressing on these minutes that was on there. Okay.
No further questions, thank you.
Any other questions on the minutes? Because imagine we'll move to motion to defer this. Moved by Councillor Guidos. You seconded by Councillor Kett. Motion to defer. To come back, or to go back to the Blackstock Rec for amendments.
March council meeting.
And come back for the March council meeting, so. Any questions on that? Motion to defer? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next item that was pulled was the 9.2.1, moved by Councillor, pulled by Councillor Guido, moved by Councillor Drew, seconded by Councillor Somerville. Councillor Guido, you pulled this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I did. I have some questions that I would like to address at this time regarding the budget. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to scroll to my questions. While Mr. Belfry's in the seat, I do know I have a question for you. I just have to find it. It's in regards to the new summer student for the ICE program. Is this indicating that we are going to have ICE, and I'll find the page, I'm sorry, indicating that we'll have the ICE in longer, or it's going in sooner, or both?
Through the mayor to councillor, we'll have ICE in longer. We have $40,000 in our capital budget to put a dehumidifier in, which will be going in probably in April, and then we'll carry the ICE into May. We won't be putting it in earlier just because of summer camps, but we have already spoken with all our user groups and been gathering the demand for a longer ice season for tryouts. And
so that's for this year?
Yeah.
And then does that impact your March break camps at all?
No.
No, okay, perfect. So then the summer student for the new summer ice program, what is the summer ice program?
The summer ice program runs to May, it'll run into May. We're not sure the exact final date yet. Minor hockey hasn't given us that time. Summer student will also be carried over. We've recognized there's a much larger use of the building too from summer camps, so it'll be carrying into summer. As with 200 kids going through the facility in a week, it sort of turns it upside down, so a little bit more cleaning help to cover off.
Thank you. And under the user fee charges, for the on page 80, it says that there's an increase, or there's no longer a savings for spring and summer rentals. Does this just mean that there's no longer as much ice available for non-user groups to use?
We have spring and summer rentals. They were merged into one account, I believe, and for ice rates, we're just carrying through the regular ice rate. It's not changing. So by merging it, I think when we did the budget process, when we merged, there was accounts that got merged together, so it didn't create savings. We just compacted them into one line, whereas we had multiple lines for spring, summer, floor rentals, those kind of things.
Okay, thank you. My next question, if I may, Mr. Mayor, is for Director Coleman regarding the upgrade to the hydro panel at Palmer Park. I was under the impression that we had upgraded the hydro panel a couple of years ago, so is this something in addition, and what is the need to have this upgrade?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I've been talking to our lead hand in parks. He says that panel is 25 to 30 years old, and the breakers are obsolete. It overheats for major events such as Ribfest or Canada Day, and the electrician has taken a look at it, and he says it could go at any time, and if it happened in the middle of the Canada Day event, we would just lose all power, and it would have a major effect on the event. There was some replacements done at the breaker panel over by the baseball diamonds where the washroom is last year, because there was a fire on that panel and it was older. So this is definitely needed to be done.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And Councilor Greer, I think you also might have been referring to the extension that Rotary participated in, which was an outlet, wasn't the panel that is in question.
So that outlet is in the panel in question? That's going
No,
to be...
the outlet was just an extension of the power so that they didn't have to, where they would have run 2 years ago, but I believe they're on generators last year, so.
Okay, thank you. And to Director of Finance, can you please explain why corporate services budget has basically doubled over last year?
Yeah, and JP's not here to defend himself.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So last year's budget, we had two items that were listed below the line item. One was a transfer from the reserve to help offset the levy, and the other was funding from OMPF. So what I did is restated 2017 by including those two amounts, roughly about $700,000 to restate his budget. So that's why the amount for his budget was $327,000. So what we've done now is that we've eliminated the reserve transfer of about $400,000, which then takes up his budget.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Next, I have Councilor Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any further questions because I grilled our director last week. So I just two things I want to say. First of all, I'm sure of all of council is going to be very happy that we're not transferring money for operating out of reserves anymore, because I've been pretty vocal about that the last few years. So there's an end to that, so you won't hear me harp on that. The second thing I want to say is my sincere appreciation to you and your staff and all of staff. We gave you a very aggressive target. You not only met it, you surpassed it, and we really, really appreciate it, all of staff, for everything that everybody has done to trim their budgets to come in under the target. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Ketz up next, then Councilor Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions. One in general, where do the excess funds go from a budget to an actual? Because a lot of the actuals were quite a bit less than the budget, so that's my question.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So these are still estimates. We are still working on final numbers, and they won't be completed until after our audit is done at the end of April. What happens, and I'll bring forward a report, and any excess funds will then be transferred into the reserve, which can be utilized for other capital projects and will be brought forward for next year.
Okay. When I was going through the budget, and that's such a small item, the bracing from the old mill.
I'm sorry,
yeah, it was a small item, but I didn't see it in the budget, so I'm just wondering, is that to Director Heritage? It's a small item, but I didn't know if it has to be in the budget or not.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, we would identify that as a separate line item, bring that back to the Director of Finance and include that in the budget.
Yeah, I'm only
It's
talking about...
such a small item.
Yeah, it's only $1,000. I didn't know if that comes right out of, if you do that automatically, or, because it's been a year and 3 months. So I didn't know if it had to be put in the budget or not.
No, we would do that on our own.
Okay, that's, and do we have a time on that, or no?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, yes, we actually do. We've got a couple of contractors going out to the site this week to take a look at it, not only the straightening of a couple of posts in the old part of the mill, but also looking at improvements to the roof at the north end of the mill that the assessment suggested because it couldn't accommodate snow loads under the current building code. So there are a couple of items in addition to the straightening of the posts that will be looked at as well.
Great, thank you. The arena booth, I'm sort of confused with that because I had 30,000, then I saw 10,000, and I guess my question is this: did it make money for us, or did we lose money? I mean, I realize it has to be supervised and things like that, which is a cost as well, but I would just sort of like just a brief.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, so there was staffing costs of $33,000, which are savings. Then there was a line item that in 2017 of $72,000 revenue, so that would be a loss of revenue, offset by expense, like supplies that we would have bought. We also have a new vendor in the booth area, which we have a lease payment coming from them. So in total, we're actually saving $22,500.
Okay, so the 10,000, is that the rent that they that they're paying now? Just roughly, it doesn't have to be
It's about
exact.
$13,000 that they're
Yeah,
paying.
okay.
Yeah.
So we had a gross sales of 72, and what would we have net on that?
I think that,
We didn't,
I think we were
net
sitting at a
anything?
loss, weren't we?
We sold
were at
for
a loss.
cost? I'm glad we got out of that business, okay. Okay, the last one is there, any, extra room for, the Main Central snow removal to increase that budget so we can get it done more often? I mean, we haven't had to have it for the last 2 years, but this one here, we seem to have it all come at once.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm fairly confident that Director Coleman could manage that through her budget. Every year, we really don't know what Mother Nature's going to throw at us, so what we try and do with our budget is to keep it as steady as possible, and we will have ups and downs, and when we do have excessive expenditures, then it's just corporately, you know, we look departmentally to manage that budget, and if it can't be done departmentally, we look corporately.
I understand what you're saying, and I'd never want to argue with Mother Nature, but the fact is that these are business people, and we had a lot of snow in December, and that's their busiest, they have to make hay while snow shines, I don't know. But I just feel that it's important to look after them. They do pay 2.1% or times more than the residential taxes, so and it's a hindrance, I think, with your garbage on Mondays and Thursdays as well, so I think there should be some extra attention to that. Thank you.
Next up, I have Councillor Somerville.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Diane, good work. You and your group and all of the directors have done a great job on this budget. I'm absolutely thrilled with it. But I do have a couple of questions. And on page 45, your operating expenses, I just need the clarification here. It says operation expenditures 16,704. How did that go up from last year? Can you just give me a little bit of a, like, where was the big spike?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so basically this summary page provides, so basically our expenses are decrease here. Our increase is $583,000, and it's all identified in the next 3 pages where the ups and downs are. It comes down to the 538.
And the revenues, did we lose money on the revenues? Because it's 4,431,000.
So that would have been, a big piece of that is the reserve transfer.
Oh, that's right.
So we did increase our revenues through our user fees and such, but there was a decrease in the transfer from the reserve.
Okay, alrighty. What account does, if you have legal expenses, and we have legal expenses, we've had a lot of them, what account does that come out of?
Legal expenses? Identified here would be under professional services.
Oh, professional services. I just wondered where that was. And it said in the other, in your I have to go through this and find it, but you said it came out of identified areas, I think. And that just threw me over when you did your little blurb at the beginning. I'd have to go through this and find it, but it didn't exactly say where you got it, where that came from.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, each area would go through line items and identify if there's a potential issue that needs to be addressed each year. So last year we had OMD expenses that were identified. This year it came down, that budget amount came down because the one that was identified last year is no longer anticipated to move forward. So each department looks at their line items and identifies any potential that would come forward.
Okay, all right, because it said the cost and timing of these legal actions are not known at this time and have not been built into this budget.
Right, so that's a significant corporate litigation that's outstanding. So Greenbank?
Yep, I figured. I shouldn't say I knew, I figured that one. Public Works is really high. Is that because of Mother Nature too and what's happened?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so that's our biggest area. It employs most of our people. They do the grunt work for the municipality, so that is where most of our resources lie, so that is where the expenditures are as well.
Okay. All right, that's it. Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
It was really well done.
Any other questions? Councillor Cat?
I forgot to say very well done.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. I did want to just highlight again on page 36 of the agenda, the summary sheet, which summarizes the region of Durham's share, Township of Scugog, and the province's educational share, how we are getting a great deal of work done, an significant amount of increase in money going towards roads, which seem to be the #1 deficient area in the township, and probably the most common request that I hear from residents nowadays is more money towards roads, and our budget survey showed that as well. So the fact that we're doing the 2% roads levy, special levy, as well as accomplishing all the other items that have been rolled up into this budget, but we've been on the favorable side of the MPAC reassessment from the properties within the region, and because Scugog is benefited from that, I mean, our increase of 3.86 is rolled into the overall increase of only 1.25%, which is very affordable for the taxpayers. We're doing it at a time when we're getting the benefit of the circumstances. So I'm very pleased to see what resources are going towards this, and look forward to the public budget meeting. Anybody on the street who's aware of this, they're very pleased of it, who follow the handful of residents that do follow the budget closely. They've expressed how pleased they are. So again, very happy to be part of the budget process here. So any final questions before we vote on it? Okay, seeing none, then we're just receiving it. A reminder that the motion just received, because we have a public meeting, then we come back with final on March 5th.
Right.
So all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next item that was pulled was the Item 9.2.2, the traffic bylaw pulled by Councillor Drew. I need a mover. Councillor Drew, are you moving it?
No.
Okay, Councillor Kett, moving it. Seconder for this? Councillor Somerville? Okay. Councillor Drew?
I had some questions. The bylaws is in the package tonight. I just lost my agenda here. Just a moment, I've lost my agenda. Okay, this is on page 95. So, that's the person I want to speak to. I'm not sure if it was in an earlier report or the bylaw, or the email that, I believe, Director Coleman sent. There was a police comment. I'm not sure where that was, but what was the police comment on that, lowering the speed limit, or on the, warrants for it?
Through the mayor to the council, I believe that was noted in the previous report, but there was also, in that message that was sent around by the director, the police indicated that artificially lowering the speed limit, in their experience, in a built-up area such as this, causes more congestion and potential safety issues with when you have that variance in speed. That was the opinion that the police had given to staff when we contacted them.
Okay, thank you. And while you're there, we don't have any 30-kilometer signs or areas in our township, do we?
Through the mayor to Councillor Drew, no, this would be the only one.
And are you aware if there's any in the region of Durham?
Through the mayor, no, I'm not. I did look into this a little bit when I was initially doing the initial report, and there were none that I could find.
So this would be an anomaly in the whole region of Durham to have a 30-kilometer speed limit?
Through the mayor, yes, my opinion is that there is no, I could not find any other places in the region that had it.
In my opinion, I believe that there's probably a lot of areas within Scugog Township that have the same issues as this particular area. Would I be correct in that assumption?
Through the mayor, if I think back to the presentation that was made to council by the Williams Point Cottages Association, and the concerns that they had in their area with having the park there and the events that they held at the park, and the concern that they had for vehicles traveling through this area. Yes, there are other areas in the township that do have similar situations as that.
Some of our subdivisions, through you, Mr. Mayor, some of our subdivisions, for instance, Apple Valley and ravines of Cockers Creek, they also have their built-up areas. They also have, level lands and parks. So those ones come to mind that would be in the same sort of boat as this particular one. Would that be correct?
Through the mayor, yes, you could say that, yes.
Thank you. And further, I'm thinking of we have a lot of cyclists on the road now. Do you have any idea how fast these cyclists go? Does anybody have any idea? Director Coleman, you're a cyclist, aren't you?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I'm not.
You're probably going so fast you can't read the speedometer.
Not myself. I can ask my husband, he's a cyclist. But.
Is there any documentation on that, do you know?
Through the mayor, I did attend a seminar not too long ago on cycling facilities in municipalities, and I recall them saying that the speed of cycling is somewhere between 10 and 40 kilometers per hour, depending on the use of what people were, obviously commuters would be going at a much faster speed. The people that use cycling as commuting, or if they're, let's say, recreational cyclers that are on for the purpose of going faster, whereas, you know, younger children and maybe families cycling would be at the lower end of that scale.
It'd be interesting that our cyclists could probably go faster than the cars would be allowed in this particular area. From all that I've heard, it appears that we might be putting more risk by lowering the speed limit to 30. It's certainly not an expected thing from our motorists within Scugog Township or even Durham Region. They're not used to any roads being 30 kilometers an hour. I think we might be, and then of course it's not warranted, so we did get a legal opinion on that, did we not? And can you just briefly tell us what that legal opinion was for everybody's benefit?
Through the Mayor, yes, we did send for legal opinion after one of the councillors had requested it.
That was me.
Sorry, thank you. And we did receive a legal opinion from the legal department at the Region of Durham, and their opinion was that council decisions should be justified as being sound public policy promoting and being motivated by health and safety concerns for the public and the public good. Therefore, if council is going to adopt a speed limit that is below recommendations in accordance with the highway traffic guidelines and police recommendations, the decision has to be justified and backed up by traffic studies and justification, provided that would lead one to reasonably conclude that it is the promotion of health and safety and sound public policy for the township to have adopted such policy studies. Artificially lowering the speed limits without proper background data and justification leading to such a conclusion may leave the township open to adverse exposure in a possible litigation matter.
That's not good news. So if I recall in the original, through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry, I recall through your original report that we asked for, that you did put this whole scenario through some software. It does not fit the highway traffic guidelines, according to your report. Was that be a fair statement? And the police have stated that it could be a risk. Was that the words, a risk? Or congestion, could cause congestion and safety issues.
Certainly, that's correct. That's what the police's opinion was, and we did do a warrant analysis for reducing the speed limit, with this software being one of them. We go out and take a look at the site as well. There's other things that we do with the study for reducing speed limits, and at that time, our conclusion was that the speed limit as posted at 40 was likely where that should stay.
Okay, thank you. Just one further question, if I might, Mr. Mayor. What other traffic calming measures have we got and can we add to that particular area?
Through the Mayor, we do have a few traffic calming measures that we use in the township of Scugog. Some of them involve bumping out in the more urban areas of downtown. Port Perry, we have some areas where the curbs have been bumped out to visually cause drivers to take note and slow down. We also, of course, have the traffic calming measures through our crossing guard areas, the two areas where we have those in the road signs that remind vehicles they need to slow down, that it is a traffic crossing, school crossing area. There are also we also have a roundabout in town here, which is actually also can be classified as a traffic calming measure.
The bumping out and crossing guards are not an issue that we could use at Williams Point. But what about children at play signs, park signs? Are there some there? Can we add some? Would that be an opportunity for us to help with the traffic calming?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, there are some there. We did note that there were some signs in place there. But part of that review and the recommendation we had made to council at that time was that we would go out and re-review all of those signs to make sure that there was enough of them out, and where we could, we would put extra signs such as the signs that go closer to parks, children at play, and also through curves in the road. It was noted that we could maybe add additional signage through the curves to make sure that drivers were aware of the upcoming curves.
But we didn't pass that, did we? Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Did we pass that at the time?
Not to my knowledge. My understanding is that council voted to have the speed limit reduced to 30.
As a result, and there was no, we did not talk about signs, we didn't pass that portion of it, or? Yeah, okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, that's correct.
Okay, when the bylaw comes forward, I'll have more to say. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other, Councillor Kett?
Thank you. These subdivisions, Apple Valley and that, is there any posted speed limit?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they're in town. There's not a requirement.
I mean, no, just in the Apple Valley. We're just comparing Apple Valley. Is there any posted signs there?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, no, there's not any posted signs in Apple Valley. There's just the posted signs that say it's 50 if it's not posted. Correct.
Okay. The roads on Williams, I'm not even sure. Williams Point Road. So it is. Yeah. Is that a regular sized road or is it narrow? When they came to do their deputation, they said it's a lot narrower than a regulation road. So is that true? Like,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is a narrow, parts of that roadway are narrower, and it does have some sections that are a little bit wider and some sections that are a little bit narrow. The measuring that I did, found the paved surface of the road was somewhere around between 6 and 6.5 meters wide, while that's not as wide as obviously brand new subdivision road. It does also have the shoulder area as well. So the whole width of the road would be sufficient in width to have two-way traffic down it, that's a two-way traffic road. But it is narrower than what we're building now, yes.
So I guess my question is, when we asked for a legal opinion, did we say that this road was substandard, or I know, you know what I'm saying? It could be 20 in some spots, 25, whatever. Did we say that, or did we just say it was a regular road?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would have come up when we were doing our study. So part of the software that we use to help us make our recommendation to council includes width of the road, number of curves, also a number of driveways or other roads entering onto the area. It takes also into consideration the grade of the road, if there are blind curves or large hills, so that it was not relayed to for the legal opinion because it was asked if we had done the study, and it was about the study we had done.
And you state that there's no other 30 speed limit signs, 30 kilometer speed limit signs? So that's anywhere in Durham region? Because I think I see them quite often. They may not be white posted signs, but there are yellow caution, 30 kilometer curb, children, whatever. Am I right?
To you, Mr. Mayor, there are these warning signs when you're going through curves, and that is part of the review that we were suggesting to do with Williams Point Road, because as you're approaching curves, you can post warning signs. They're not maximum speed limit signs. They're more of a recommended speed limit through a curve area. And I know what you're saying. I've seen those as well. They're typically 25. When you're going around a bend, it's recommended that you slow your speed down to 25, and they are in the region. But as far as bylaw and posted speed limit signs, my investigation found there were none in the region that were bylaw and posted at 30.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Any other questions from council? I know Councillor Watton is not here, and she's, I don't want to speak for her, but I do recall some of the items that she iterated when she was coming to support the petition that came forward, and I just want to clarify this. Is it a dead end at the end of Williams Point Road?
Mr. Mayor, if you look on page 2 of the map, so Williams Point Road actually ends at the west end of Jackrabbit Run. And then Jackrabbit Run is a dead-end road. The other road allowance that you see headed south is unopened. That's not really a road out. It's just some property that the township owns. But Williams Point, if you come onto Williams Point from Visual Road 57, you will hit a dead end.
You'll hit a dead end.
Yes.
And as you follow that Williams Point Road, and then it goes into a unpaved road on the Jackrabbit Run. And it's a winding road and parks and et cetera on there. So, and I do know the petition that came forward, and I'm just trying to clarify why, you know, maybe this is different than urbanized in-town subdivisions, et cetera. It's not, this is exactly the Cottagers Association. These were typically cottages that were built very close together, small driveways, and now many of them may be permanent homes, but it is quite dense there, and not, the road wouldn't have been built to our standards today, as you mentioned. I do know it was referenced about the Durham region, but I have here the City of Toronto, which was also referenced when we were talking about this before, about 30-kilometer speed limit on local roads in Toronto and East York community, and the approval of that. It's a long document, so I don't want to go into it, but I do know that there is it's not like we're setting a precedent for all municipalities. There are municipalities that do have 30 kilometers. Am I correct in stating that?
Yes, I did look up, I probably have the same document that you have, Mr. Mayor. I did look up the City of Toronto report that was dealing with their recommendations for 30-kilometer speed limits, and I did read through that. So they do have some areas that are 30-kilometer-an-hour speed limit.
And I just, and I know the fact that we had a petition come forward with a significant, I don't know the exact percentage of that it was, because I don't have that particular report in front of us, but that's the comfort I have in supporting the 30-kilometer speed limit. I know that we have software and we have comments, MTO and police, etc., but I think taking a holistic approach to it all, I'm quite comfortable in supporting the 30-kilometer speed limit, and we just deal with them in a one-off situation for any of them that come forward. And I do appreciate the concerns that have been brought up by Councillor Drew, also the concerns that are raised in the report, but I do think in my head and my heart that this is the right thing to do for the residents. And I know from Councillor Watton's past references to it too, it's in her ward and she supports it, has supported it in the past when it came to council. So any other council want to speak to Councillor Kett, or first time Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Laura, you mentioned that it would open us up to liability. What would that be? What, if someone was to get into an accident, that would open us up to liability? Or what liability were they stating we would be in jeopardy of?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll just read that last sentence. It states that again. It says, artificially lowering speed limits without the proper background data and justification leading to such a conclusion may leave the township open to adverse exposure in a possible litigation matter.
Okay.
So that means if we were in court and it was questioned what was the recommended speed limit for the road, and we answered we did a study and the recommended speed limit was let's say it was 40. Then the court would say, why did you then put it at 30? And we would have to say, yes, that's true that the study and the warrant study indicated that it should be 40, but council's decision was to put it at 30.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Somerville, did you have your hand up? No. Councillor Kett?
Thank you, Mayor. I understand the studies and that. The problem I have is that when we're dealing with rural areas and the wishes of our residents, that, to me, that's how I have to support it, is that's what they want. And they happen to be the people that live there, and they don't want racing on their street, and I understand that, and like the mayor said, the houses are close to the road, and we just need one accident to happen, and maybe we'd be on the other side of the litigation. So, I'd have to support it for that reason.
Councillor Drew?
One question about the Toronto situation. Why? Why are are all the streets, all the residential streets in Toronto 30, or is there some reason why? I mean, if I go into Toronto proper, my grandmother lived there, the houses are, the lots are 16 feet, and the roads are very narrow. Is that the reason?
Through the Mayor, when I read through the document, it was a report actually to council that the traffic department made with regards to lowering the speed limits to 30 in some areas of Toronto. In reading it appeared to me that they were talking about very, very urban environments where there was heavy traffic and heavy cycling traffic, and where areas where they couldn't implement, let's say, a bike lane or something like that, but they busy urban areas, they don't recommend them in their report. They don't recommend them in rural areas such as this. They really are just for their heavily used urban areas where they've had to implement these bike lanes, which has they believe that the effect of lowering the speed limit is a safer option in that environment, but it's a much, much busier area they've done it.
And yeah, it is a very long document here, and it does reference pedestrian collisions as well as cyclists, so I do believe it's not just about cyclists, pedestrians, and considering that most, if not all, of Toronto is urbanized, then it would be cycling that and the pedestrian crossings. But I know from when we brought this forward before that it's in a rural area, as you mentioned, but it's in a densely populated area in a rural area, and it's parks, no sidewalks, no urbanization, so they have to walk on the edge of the road and all that. So again, I do still support this, and I understand that the concerns are out there, and just leave it at that. Are any final questions, Councillor Somerville?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Laurie, I am concerned about what the the legal recommendations are. This is my major concern. What about a traffic study? And how much would a traffic study cost if we did that? I just think we need some backup just in the event that something happens. I don't know this road. I don't even think I've ever been on this road. So I don't know how narrow it is, and I don't know what the density of the population is or the width of these lots. I'm sure it looks like, by what I see here, they're pretty dense. So I think we should follow through with some of the what is suggested from the legal department. And so if we decided to do a study, a traffic study, who would we get and how much would it cost?
Through the Mayor, these studies all studies are expensive. There's always costs involved with them. We do have an engineering services roster that does include some some staff that have this type of background. I could get a price. I wouldn't want to try to think of an amount offhand, but you could do a study of this area that would look at it more in depth. That's definitely a possibility.
I think we need to cover our bases. I'm just not comfortable with dropping it to 30, and especially when we have already had legal recommendations, and we're not following through with the legal recommendations. We're being told what we should be doing, and without following through. I'd hate a litigation if something happened. So I'm in favor, but I'm not in favor. Like, I think it'd be great to lower it, but I want all the bases covered before we lower it. So.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, because the City of Toronto has a policy for these 30-kilometer speed limits, and that's something that we are lacking. We don't have a policy in place for lowering speed limits below recommended levels. So that is something to consider.
I'm sorry, did you ballpark a cost of the traffic study?
No, sorry, I wouldn't want to do that. I know that studies, I mean, even the lowest study starts at $1,500, so they go up from there. I wouldn't want to, but I definitely could get you that answer tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I was just, but I guess to clarify, it is in council's authority to set the speed limits, correct?
That's correct.
So, and I think I go back to Councillor Kett's point about just the commenting that was received back and put in the report is of a general nature based on the information that was provided to them, right? Okay. Okay, any other questions on this? Okay. The report, which is traffic bylaw amendment, Williams Point Road speed limit be received, and that the traffic bylaw 4517 be amended and adopted as directed by council on December 18, 2017. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Next item that was pulled is by Councillor Somerville, which is the 9.2.3, the new desktop workstations. Mr. Dubecki is here for questions, so I need to make sure that I moved by Councillor Somerville, second by Councillor Drew. Councillor Somerville?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions. Adam, we need these badly, but that's not a question. And you know we do. Why did you choose Bear Tech Solutions when we approved a 37.5 on the capital budget? And we had several that were like right in that category, and I just want to know, did you check all of these companies to see what kind of desktops they were going to give us and what our purchase was instead of just accepting the cheapest and the lowest?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So I actually went through and checked in depth. I had a nice little spreadsheet set up with all the specs of all the different options. And with what they were offering, it just wasn't worth the extra $5,000 to go up to the ones that were in and around the 34,000 range. The ones at the lower end were all HP brand, and the one that were in and around 34,000 were Dell's, and it wasn't worth the price increase.
Why was the Xeron technology so high? What did they have to offer that, did they have a magnificent desktop that did its own work?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they actually didn't even include what they were going to sell us. They just put the price in. So I didn't follow up with that one.
No wonder, I wouldn't either. I think that was my only question on that one. Thank you.
Other questions for this? I just want to say thank you, Mr. Dubecki, for completing the RFP and expediting this process, because I know that once this gets deployed out to the staff, with all the other updates in there, I think the overall patience level will go up by the staff. So, thanks again for your expertise and knowledge of getting this through, and look forward to the enhancements. Having said that, final questions on that? All right, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next item is Councillor Somerville, 9.2.4, moved by Councillor Somerville, second by Councillor Guido, the Hypervision RFP award and VM hosts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, once again. I don't know what Hypervision software is. Can you explain that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So the Hypervisor.
Oh, Hypervisor, sorry.
Hypervisor, yeah, I just had to double check that I didn't misspell it.
It's Envision, sorry.
The old school way of having data centers, you have one server, one physical piece of hardware, and you have one server that runs on it. And now the new, modern, more resilient and faster way of doing it is you have still one physical server, but then you have a piece of software that runs on it, which runs multiple servers. So the hypervisor just lets you span multiple pieces of hardware. So in this case, we'll have 3 physical pieces of hardware running 17 servers. So instead of having 17 physical servers in there.
I understand that now, thank you. That's good. Now, my second question is the same question as I had before. Thank you for, probably did a spreadsheet on all of these again. We gave you another capital budget for that, I think. But there's $15,000 difference between one and the other. Why did you choose the one that you did choose, and why didn't you choose one that was $32,000, say?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. As opposed to the desktops, which were different brands, almost every single one here offered the exact same hardware. And actually the ones that were around 32 offered one generation older, and so the cheapest one is just, it's the newest piece of hardware, and the other ones are a little bit older. So really it's almost the exact same thing, just a little bit better for cheaper.
And just as good as you said. That's good. Thank you for doing that. That's, I really appreciate that. Yes, we need all these things. We bring this place up to par. Thank you.
Definitely. Councillor Cat?
Just to run on that point, would we not, or we can't get a better deal if we went with Bear Tech with both of them?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I didn't follow up Bear Tech to see if we could get like a bundle deal if we did both. I'm not sure with the process for doing the RFT. I don't know if that's allowed.
Well, that's my question. Is it not part of our procurement? Does anyone policy maybe it says this is what you have to go with?
I'm looking at Ms. Valentin as the procurement policy. My recollection is that unless you stated that in the RFP, that it would be an opportunity to economies of scale, so to speak, then if it wasn't clearly identified in there, then you couldn't use it as a weighting measurement. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Any other questions, Mr. Vecchi? Okay, again, glad to see this is being implemented. Am I correct, you're doing the installs, or is there some install that's required from the provider?
I'll be doing all the installs.
So it's providing the hardware to you, so you wouldn't want anybody else touching all the setup anyways,
exactly.
Right? I know how
I want all the fun.
Have you tried turning it back off and on again? Any final questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next item up is the, we've got regional report pulled by Councillor Guido and moved by Councillor Guido, second by Councillor Drew. Councillor Guido.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have 2 questions or items on the report. Firstly, I would like to thank the region and our regional councillor and mayor for pushing forward for this $20,000 item in their budget for a tourism representative for Scugog. It's something that's certainly desperately needed here. It's a motion that I put forward here in council and totally wholeheartedly support this, and I feel this will go hand in hand with the tourism plan that is going to come forward to council from our tourism subcommittee. So if you can thank our region on our behalf, Councillor Drew. I understand it's Wednesday that it's actually going to be ratified in council, so hopefully nothing happens between now and then. The other item is the improvement on Transit's on-demand service for Scugog. Can you or the mayor who sit on the committee give us an overview as to how that program is working for Scugog and what improvements they are looking to do?
Do you want to go ahead?
You can
okay, well,
your comments.
How the program works is if you live in an outlying area that doesn't have a bus going by, you can call one day ahead. If you've got an appointment, say, at the doctor's office or down in Oshawa, you can call a day ahead, and they will pick you up and take you to the closest stop so that you can get on the regular route. The improvement was, and I'm going to get you to clarify this, that the improvement was that it wasn't available every day, and now it's going to be all weekdays. I'd have to clarify that, because I don't have it in front of me right now.
Thank you, and my question was more, how has it been working in Scugog? Have our residents been using this service? Is this something that we have seen numbers slowly increasing or greatly increasing in the use on the on-demand?
It hasn't been in place that long, and no, there hasn't been a lot of uptake on it, and that's why they're increasing the number of days that it will be available to give it a chance to be successful. Because we all realize that, and everybody realizes, people in Scugog in particular, and in North Durham, realize that we don't have the same kind of transit services that they do in the south. But then we've got all kinds of geography, but not the population. So, on the other hand, you get people that complain because they see a bus go by with 2 people in it, and they say, what a waste of money. So what they're trying to do is increase the ridership by offering this on-demand service. So as it becomes better known and starts to get utilized, and then it starts to grow, but they're giving it a chance, so that's really good news. They're giving it another chance. So.
Okay, and do we know the dollar value that's being associated to those improvements?
Not much.
Yeah, it's not much. And when you look at the budget items, like there were capital dollars, but there's this called PTIF. It's a Transportation Infrastructure Fund from the province that was able to purchase items. So the whole regional Durham Transit benefited from upwards of $9 million of provincial money that had to be allocated. So, and part of the Northern strategy received funding for that, for the shorter buses to do the on-demand service. But questions when I put forward about seeing how we get a greater uptake on it, and the answers I got back were, one is its first rollout was designed to hit the commuters, the students and the commuters, because you have to plan for it, you have to call ahead, so it's not going to be like, well, you've got a sudden urge to go into town or something, and you get the on-demand service. You have to know the day before or previously to order that, so they can kind of fill a route. That's the whole plan behind it, to make it efficient. And some of the other items that were discussed, Mayor of Uxbridge and regional councillor from Brock and myself met with transit. We were talking about how do we better market it, because a lot of people aren't familiar with this on-demand north strategy, that transit strategy for the north that we have. So there have been discussions about how we can work together and collaboratively to get the word out, how they can use this service. It's the same cost as transit. It takes you to, as Councillor Drew has said, to the closest main line. So on us, it's basically at the independent stop. If you're coming in from the east, if you're coming in from the west, it could be either line going up through town across towards Uxbridge or to Brock. So it's something that they're giving energy for, and they want it to be successful too, because they know that it is a often complained about our transit dollars that go towards that, and they're trying to make it a success story for us. So the more we talk about it, the more that the paper reports about it, or even references Link. They have a whole Link banner ad right on their Durham Transit website, so citizens or residents can click on that, get all the details, get the schedules. So if we want transit to be accessible to all, which it is with this on-demand now, then we want to make sure it's used, so that in the future they don't want to pull it away because it's not being used. So.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Catt.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wondered if the regional councillor could explain to me, I know I've seen it a couple times today, a $4 increase on the average residential housing taxes when it's a 1.9%, and ours is 1.25, and that's $55.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's because of the assessment, which drives the rate, and our rate is lower than many of the other municipalities in Durham region, which means that the effect on our tax bill from the region is a lot less. So it's only $4.
No, sorry, that,
Maybe Director Valentin can explain it better.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the region will get a reassessment of the entire Durham region. So their taxes are spread over the 8 area lower tiers. And the shift, we benefited the last 2 years by having our assessment, the regional portion, lower than some of the other lower areas, Whitby and Ajax, for instance. They actually have an increase in their assessed value, so their 1.9% increase of the region would actually be higher because their assessment is higher.
so basically, having our houses devalued so that we lost money actually benefits us by only increasing our taxes by $4?
It's not really a devalue, it's paper, it's MPAC's value.
No, but MPAC, if it's going up higher everywhere else in the region, and it doesn't go up as high here, that means we're actually losing value in our homes compared to the rest of the Durham region.
Possibly, yes.
Right. I still very befuddled on a $4 increase, per house. I really have a hard time with that. So.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I did confirm those figures also with the region. I spoke to them.
No, I'm not doubting you one bit. I'm doubting them.
That's all they're charging us. I'm pleased.
Councillor Kay, you referenced the MPAC, and that's like, as was mentioned, MPAC, it's commonly stated about the efficiencies of MPAC and the accuracies of MPAC because it is notional. It's based on sales, but and other criteria. So, there's many people that would be happy to say on paper they'd be happy to have a lesser value, to pay less of the share of the taxes, because you ask the residents of Whitby who are taking the brunt of the increase, that are getting the other side of it, and they'd be arguing about MPAC too, saying, well, you're valuing our house is too high. So.
Well, I understand what your perspective is, Mr. Mayor, but the real perspective is I have tax-free money in the equity of my home. And if the equity of my home, or the value of my home is higher, then the tax rate could be lower, and the municipality would get the same amount of money, correct?
Not sure I'm following with what you're saying.
But if the value of my home was higher, then the tax rate, 0.0121, is that what it is? Would actually be lower to come up with the same amount of taxes.
Yeah, but we're not discussing any of the rates.
Okay,
anyway.
that's fine. I'm still confused with the $4.
All right. So, yep, we verified it, and we've had the regional report too, which talked about all the different areas going up and down. So we were benefiting from a 4-year phase-in of the relative valuation change from Whitby to the Lakeshore communities versus the northern communities. So I will happily take it. So, any other questions on the regional report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next item up is the bylaw. Councillor Somerville has moved the bylaw for the Williams Point. This is for the bylaws and amend the traffic bylaw 4517. And we need a seconder for that. Councillor Kett. Councillor Drew pulled it. Councillor Drew?
I will not support it. I feel that we are putting safety at risk here, and our township at risk, so I will not support it, unfortunately.
Any other questions on that one? All those in favor? Carried. It's carried. I just wanted to give the opportunity. Opposed? It's passed, but did you have a question, Councillor Somerville?
I do, because I actually did make that a motion, and is that legitimate? I did not.
Yes, you can make you can make a move a motion and still not support it. Just to get on the floor.
Thank you.
Fine.
Thank you.
So it was noted that you didn't support it. So, and then we are, notice of motion here, so, next item is, notice of motion, moved by Councillor Katz, seconded by Councillor Somerville, that the Township School execute a forensic audit on the BIA from years 2012-2016 and to complete by April 30, 2018, and that a forensic audit be paid for by the Township to show transparency and accountability. Councillor Katz, did you want to speak to your notice of motion?
I do, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to refer to our strategic, which says honesty and integrity, fiscal accountability and responsibility. So, I've raised the concern about clarity and transparency of the BIA finances before, but it's necessary to look at them again. At the December 18th, 2017 meeting with the BIA treasurer said that a confirmed surplus position in their budget had become a deficit, and this was only revealed to him days prior to the meeting. We're told that a successful audit has been performed and that staff and BDO have put a lot of effort into it, but this change took place after the successful audit. This means there still might be some doubt. The BIA presentation also mentioned that they lacked access to some records and that a computer that they had been given and were given a replacement in lieu was blank, meaning that there was a missing asset and missing data. This could have serious consequences, as recent provincial government issues have resulted in a conviction. With this in mind, I want to ensure that this council, this administration, has a clearance letter from our auditors that state, despite any discrepancies or lack of records, this council is not in a position of liability for BIA affairs. The BIA is a local board of this council and is therefore our responsibility. If the supposed successful audit is deemed adequate assurance of this position, I also believe we need to have a legal opinion with a clearance letter confirming that position. If either of these cannot be provided, then my motion stands as written. It would be helpful to have the written preliminary quotes for the audit that was presented verbally on December the 18th. It seems to me that it should go to a tender in any case with complete parameters laid out. It is important to note as well that the president of the Chamber of Commerce just last week emailed me and has expressed his interest in having the audit done, also with the Chamber of Commerce, in order to remove any further doubt from the situation. This would also be of interest to Howard Danson, who was the chair of the Finance Committee at that time. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have a motion, notice of motion before us, and I just before I open it up for the Director of Finance and questions from Council, I just want to clarify what exactly is it that you were hoping to achieve from this motion, because I'm a little bit unclear based on what your preamble was there and what the actual motion is. Seems like completely separate items.
The motion is as it's written. The only way that I would take it back is if there is a letter from the auditor and a letter from our legal counsel indemnifying the council and the township of any liability.
Okay, but that's you're talking about pulling back, but I'm just, this actual motion here, I'm just trying to clarify for my benefit and maybe for the rest of council on what it is you hope to see from this. This is forensic audit.
From a forensic audit, all I want to have is the truth that has been bandied around for the last year and a half.
And I know the estimates were, I think it was 20,000 per year, so it would be based on the initial estimates we had. Would it be 5 years here? It would be about could be 100,000 or more, but understanding what you'd referenced about an RFP, but still significant dollars. It's not-
Well, I mean, I've spoken with a couple of accounting firms, and it's not anywhere close to that. But, I know that I'd like to see the quotes too.
Ms. Valentin, do you, have anything or questions or clarity that's needed based on the motion? Or I know that, you know, I was asking questions about, to get clarified from the auditor, and there was brought up before when the notice motion was being circulated, so to know if you have any update on the answers or anything.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I did reach out to our auditor, again, with regards to the 2016 BIA audit, and just wanted some clarity for myself as well. So they did provide a substantially, significantly more intense audit. Some of the feedback that I received from the auditor is a fraud risk was raised by the board. There was additional testing performed on the expenses from the Chamber of Commerce. The additional testing did not identify any issue. So the time invested by the BIA was extensive. They basically spent on the 2016 budget alone, audit alone, 150 hours, when in fact it should have only taken 30 hours to complete. And they had their senior staff and partners working on that entire file. The BIA did provide our auditor with letter of concern as to the items the issues that were concerning to them. The auditors then took that letter and built their audit around that letter of concern, and they did provide the BIA with a response to the letter of concern. If there was any instances of fraud, if they encountered any potential fraud during the course of their audit, they would have been required to communicate those findings to those charged with governance, so it would have been the BIA, and they did not find any instances of that. So as far as our auditor was concerned, it was a comprehensive audit that was done for 2016. They did not find any instances of fraud. They gave us a qualified audit opinion, qualified based on revenues only, not on expenditures.
I understand where you're going with that, but this request is from 2012 on, and I'm not going to mention anything about fraud. So the request, they've had letters from a forensic auditor that was an RCMP forensics for 38 years, and he recommended that there was a forensic audit. There was, I mean, I'll just leave it at that. I mean, that doesn't come any better of a recommendation to me. All I want to make sure is that you and this township and all the councilors have no liability at all. That's all I want to make sure. And the reason I'm putting the motion forward right now to have that done is to start the ball rolling, because we have to be accountable. There's far too many questions out there by everybody, and even with the Chamber of Commerce agreeing that it has to be out there so everybody can reassure themselves that there was no improprieties. So that's, if there's a lawyer out there that, our lawyer says that there's no liability, then that would be fine with me.
Councilor Guido?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've written down several questions, but perhaps Director Valentin, can you explain liability in respect to this area? If the auditors have provided a finalized audit for those years, are we liable for anything once the audit's been complete?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know that I know the answer to that. We have received clean audits, financial statement audits from all of those years. I'm not aware of any issues. The same audit firm has been doing the audit. Nothing was brought to their attention prior to the 2016 financial audit. The concerns were brought forward, and they did do an extensive review of everything. That's all I can say. I'm not sure.
Okay, and from a municipal standpoint, are we able to tender out a forensic audit? Is that something that we're able to do, or do we have to stick with the auditor that the municipality uses?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, actually, we would not be able to use our financial statement auditor. There would be a conflict of interest with that,
so we would have to tender it out then? Okay. Not being familiar with the forensic audit, is there any way that throughout that audit review that the auditor could force the chamber to provide the documents that is needed to do this audit?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe so, no. There's no legal obligation for anybody to provide documentation to the auditor.
So maybe my question is now to Councillor Kett then. If the auditor can't force the chamber to provide the documentation that's missing, we're still stuck with the same documentation that the BIA currently has.
I don't think there was anything brought up about the Chamber of Commerce in the forensic recommendation. They've just agreed that it should be done. The president of the Chamber of Commerce agrees that a forensic audit should be done and that they would help and participate with it. There's nothing in your recommendation letter from the forensic auditor that says that it has to be anything to do with the chamber.
Well, I'm sorry, I was under the impression that this was to understand the shared services and utilities and back and forth between the chamber and the BIA.
There may be questions later on that concern the chamber, but right now, all the recommendations that were made, the recommendation was to do a forensic audit from 2012 to 2016.
Okay, so my other question was written here that the president of the chamber supports that the BIA does a forensic audit?
I got an email from him last week.
Identifying that he supports it, or the board supports it, or, I'm sorry, I'm confused.
Yeah, that he supports it, and he copied the board and his vice president.
Okay.
You got that.
All right. I don't have any other questions right now, outside of saying that I would find it very difficult to support $100,000. While I believe the truth and finding out whatever needs to be found out is very important, $100,000 is a huge burden to ask our residents to bear, not disqualifying the importance of it, but it is a huge financial burden for the taxpayers. Thank you.
Councillor Drew?
Thank you. I'm wondering if you could forward that email, Councillor Kett, that you got from the President of the Chamber. That would be very helpful. Is there any indication that the BIA board actually wants this?
I'm sorry, Councillor Drew, but you received the email on May the 17th last year.
I'm talking...
They're still requesting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Kett is correct. Back in the spring, the BIA board did request via their minutes that a forensic audit would be undertaken. However, there is no recent motion by the BIA board to indicate that they are revisiting this or looking for an update. I wasn't present at the last meeting. Perhaps something occurred there and I haven't seen those minutes. But there is no recent motion from the board.
And I might add that the audit had gone through its process with the 5 times the extra time into it since that time, so...
Okay, thank you. Further questions. When we have an audit, like last year we had our audit for 2016, is there not a letter at the very beginning of the audit stating that they did not see any misstatements or, you know, that it's a clean audit? Is there not that letter?
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes, they did receive a letter, management letter that states, the concerns that were raised were looked at, and so the financial audit was completed, and a qualified audit opinion based on the revenues and not being able to quantify the revenues because a lot of them were cash, nothing to do with expenditures.
Okay, so that letter is on file saying that they performed a clean audit, and that they did do extra work on this particular concerns.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Did we have to pay anything for the extra hours that they performed on the BIA specifically?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. Although our auditor did forgive and gifted us a substantial amount, it was still 3 times higher than what we would normally pay for their audit.
So we've already paid for an extensive audit. Okay,
correct.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's, we have dealt with this motion before, and we've turned it down already once, if I remember correctly. Was there not a motion before to do a forensic audit?
Through the Mayor, staff did take a look to see if we could find a record of a motion, and although there has been considerable discussion on this matter, we couldn't find the actual motion that was considered by council.
Okay, thank you. I would not support it. Have you got an estimate on how much it would cost, a recent estimate on how much it would cost to do 4 or 5 years of
through you, Mr. Mayor, not recently. When we did ask the auditor back in the fall, it was between $20,000 and $30,000 per year.
Per year. Okay. I'm wondering, with the size of the BIA budget, to what end how would this benefit anybody to spend like $100,000 to find, if they find anything at all, to find maybe a few $1,000s. It's that, to me, there was the strategic plan and our goals, and responsibility was mentioned in that goal, and to me, to spend $100,000 on an audit when we've already had a good look at it, the auditors have had a good look at it, that would be, in my opinion, irresponsible.
Councillor Somerville? No. Councillor Kett, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to answer a few. Number one, I'd like to ask just a question to the CFO. How many line items are there on the BIA budget? Or the BIA account?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I couldn't say without looking at it. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Like, would I be over-exaggerating if there was 10 a month? Like 10
through you, Mr. Mayor, I really can't say. I don't know. I wasn't here for those years. I just know that substantial amount of time and effort was put into 2016. I wasn't here. Oh, maybe my finance manager can speak to that. Okay. So easily, from my manager of finance, easily 500 to 1,000 transactions.
That's in a year?
Yes.
Okay. So 500 items for $20,000? Or 1,000 items for $20,000? $20 an item? I'm afraid the 20,000 to me, so maybe we should be looking at another accounting firm for the township as well, because to me that is extraordinarily high.
Councillor Kett, you do realize that for an auditor position they have to be a public accountant, and their bill out rate would be, you know, about a couple $100 an hour. It won't be any less than $100 an hour if you got somebody that was in there, but you're talking $200, $300 an hour. so it wouldn't take long for that to add up to $20,000 for each year. I'm just thinking about the amount of time that would be involved. I don't think the ballparking is far off at all.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, I'd like to see a written quote on that, because I can't, well, it still stands that I want to make sure that we're indemnified from any liability at all. Because I know for a fact, if we let this go without keeping it in check, then we're the ones that are responsible for it. And we've been warned by a forensic auditor that it should be done. So, my case very simply is that it should be done. He's found things, I'm not at liberty to say what it is, but, and he said from 2012 to 2016. So, I mean, if there's a lawyer out there that'll say that we don't have any liability, and if there's an accountant out there that says we don't have any liability...
So, Councillor Cat, I think that, if you're referring to the BIA's engagement of a forensic overview or to look into it, and they have further reasoning to move on it, the BIA has the authority within themselves to pay for it and proceed on that. Nobody is stopping the BIA from pursuing it any further. We have, through the recommendations from our authority from our council, had supported it, our auditors to dig deeper into it. The auditor had to, based on the concerns that were raised, and I feel quite comfortable with the extra amount of time spent that our public auditors who act for us have spent 150 hours when normally it takes 30 hours on just the 2016 year alone, and the Chamber of Commerce did cooperate with them and gave them copies of what was requested. So I don't think what you're saying there, you're referring to something there. The BIA, who is their own body, can decide to spend more of their own money, which they would be accountable to the BIA levy paying members for how much they spend, just like we're accountable to the public for what we authorize to spend. And I agree with Councillor Drew and Councillor Guido and many other times mentioned that I would find it very difficult to authorize $100,000, or even if it was $50,000, $25,000 to pursue this any further. We've already spent a great deal of time and a great deal of money. And I know what you're putting forward there. You want reassurance, but I don't think anybody's going to give you the reassurance you're looking for.
And all I'm asking for is the truth, and that's all the people in Scugog are asking for.
At what cost?
Is the truth. Well, I mean, we've spent $76,000 on integrity commissioners. We spent how many thousands of dollars on ward boundary reviews?
This is not the matter before us. This is the motion. Keep your on to the BIA.
You're talking about justification for what? I'm saying justification for honesty, accountability, and transparency. And if there's somebody out there that'll give us a $50 letter that says we won't be liable,
and nobody's going to give you that letter. I'm saying that I am comfortable with the extra work that our auditors put in and the letters, our consolidated audit that we received. Our Director of Finance is comfortable with that. She's gone back and had questions answered on that one. I am quite comfortable with what we received back there. So if you're not comfortable, you've got the motion here. Let's proceed on the motion. Any other questions on it? Councillor Guido.
Sorry, very quick question to our Director of Finance. Our auditors, have they provided their opinion on this type of letter that Councillor Kett is referring? Is this something that they can do, have done, would do?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they were not familiar with it. The auditor would have to have gone through the national office, and she hadn't really heard of this before, so to give a clearance letter. I'm not sure that you would get anyone to say that you'll never be sued for anything. I don't know.
Councillor Kett?
Do we have any documentation to that effect? Just the email?
No,
just
it's
a phone
verbal,
call?
it's a phone call.
Okay, so motion is before you. All those in favor? Lost. Now to item number 13, new business, general information. No closed session, confirming bylaw. Yes. New business, you have new business, Councillor Kett?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank Mr. Danson for raising his concerns about my expenses. Although I didn't appreciate the manner which it was done, as you'll know, Mr. Mayor, having undertaken the review, it has brought light to clerical errors and procedural weaknesses that go beyond my records and expenses. For example, Mr. Danson said that I had claimed for KRC meetings I hadn't attended, when in fact I had. My name was simply left off the attendance list. I made motions and was recorded in the body of the minutes and was at the meetings. There's also instances where I drove and others rode with me, as you know, Mr. Mayor, and mileage was assessed for the passengers as well as the driver, generally without passengers' knowledge. Such payments were not always obvious to the passengers, since they hadn't submitted claims for the trips and it had been done on their behalf. Okay. In at least one instance, I attended a meeting for with the KRCA staff, but this was not a regular meeting of the board. Nevertheless, it was a business that had to be conducted on their site. There have been many misunderstandings of policy and of facts. Also, despite the good efforts of our staff to improve our procedures, there are still some ambiguities. Therefore, I think it would be prudent for this council to consider doing an audit of the expenses of council, senior staff, boards, and committees, as has been previously suggested. The purpose is to ensure this council has demonstrated due care and concern for the use of public funds. This is something that we are bound to do, and we only have a few months left in our term to ensure that our house is clean and that the next council has clear policies and a confident position to start from. I'd like to make a notice of motion that be done at the next meeting.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, so Councillor Kett, of course, you may advise the clerk of the wording of that motion so it can be added to the next council meeting?
No, I haven't.
No, but you will be doing that?
Yes.
Yes.
I will advise the clerk
of the wording and the timing and such.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other new business? Seeing none, we go to our confirming bylaw. Moved by Councillor Drew, seconded by Councillor Guido, that bylaw number 15-18, confirming the proceedings of the regular council meeting held Monday, February 12, 2018, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 12th day of February 2018, and the mayor and clerk are hereby directed to sign same and fix the corporate seal thereto. All those in favor? Carried. And then motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Guido, seconded by Councillor Somerville. All those in favor? Carried.
8:30.
Thank you.
Not even 8:30. Way to go, Paul.